Hello, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 4 o'clock. Council, any additions or deletions to today's agenda? Seeing none. Acting CEO Howarth, any additions?
None from administration, thank you.
Thank you for that. Council, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated Tuesday, May 4th, 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the table. Any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. And just a note, Councillor Ostashik will be joining us in a few moments. Just sharing that. And with that, that'll bring us to our council minutes for adoption. Council, any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that we adopt the regular meeting of council minutes for April 6, 2021, standing committee of council minutes, April 13th, 2021, standing committee of council minutes, April 20th, 2021, and the special meeting of council minutes for April 27th, 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any questions or debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's also passed unanimously. That'll bring us to our citizens minute with council. Ms. Anderson, any submissions today?
There were no submissions for a minute with council.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. And that'll bring us to our public hearing segment for today. And I will hand it over to our newly appointed Deputy Mayor, Mr. Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The following public hearing is held pursuant to Section 674 of the Municipal Government Act, being Chapter M26 RSA 2000 and amendments thereto. The following rules of conduct will be followed during this public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point. The order of presentation shall be entry of written submissions, those supporting the municipal reserve disposal, those opposing the municipal reserve disposal, and any other person deemed to be affected by the municipal reserve disposal. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes. There will be no debating the municipal reserve disposal. However, questions to the councillors or other parties will be accepted through the chair. I hereby declare the public hearing relating to the municipal reserve disposal for Plan 9620706, Block 1, Lot 40 MR open.
The purpose of the proposed municipal reserve disposal is to remove the municipal reserve designation from a portion of 137 Meyer Street as shown in the municipal reserve disposal map. Notice of this public hearing was advertised in the Hinton Voice newspaper on April 22nd and 29th, 2021, posted on the site and mailed to adjacent landowners.
Are there any late written submissions relating to the municipal reserve disposal?
No late submissions received.
Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of the municipal reserve disposal?
No.
No one. Anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to the municipal reserve disposal?
There's no one.
No one? Okay. So just to finish the script, is there anyone present who is deemed to be affected by the municipal reserve disposal and wishes to speak? Nothing? All right. Do the councillors have any further questions? Seeing none, do the councillors require further information? All right. If not, I hereby declare that the public hearing relating to the municipal reserve disposal for Plan 9620706, Block 1, Lot 40 MR closed, and will accept a motion to adjourn. Councillor Nelson?
I'll move that we adjourn the public hearing.
All right. All those in favor? All right. Public hearing adjourned.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Waugh. And that brings us to our action items for this evening. And the first one is the municipal reserve disposal. And I'll hand it over to Ms. Howarth.
Thank you. So this matter was introduced to Standing Committee on April 13th of this year. We have since posted notifications for the public hearing in the April 22nd and April 29th editions of the Hinton Voice. We've mailed notices to the adjacent landowners and posted a notice at the physical site. As you know, no written submissions for or against the municipal reserve disposal have been received to date. And as such, in light of the public hearing held just recently, the administration recommends that council proceed with the removal of the municipal reserve designation as shown on the map, and that those lands be converted to a road right of way. I have Ms. Petcow and as well as Ms. Walker and Mr. Rousseau, all to assist in supporting questions if council has any at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Howarth. Council, I will begin with Councillor Hawes and Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No questions. Honestly, I just want to make the motion that council proceed with the removal of the municipal reserve designation from approximately 157 meter square of plan 9620706, block 1, lot 40 MR, which otherwise known as 137 Meyer Street is shown on the municipal reserve disposal map, and that council direct administration to convert the approximately 157 square meters of plan 9620706, block 1, lot 40 MR, 137 Meyer Street as shown on the municipal reserve disposal map to road right of way. And if I may speak to it, it's interesting how a small little piece of land can hold up development, but looking forward to see what goes up in that area and working with the landowner. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, administration, I guess just for anybody who might be watching and be looking for some kind of clarification or transparency and common speak, essentially what we're doing is we're granting the developer in between the hotel and Dairy Queen the ability to access a laneway through the rear near the back of the hotel. And in the pictures that we're presented with and on a site location visit, you can see that it's even partially paved in that area already. So again, this is just going to make it a legal rear entry. Is that an accurate way of sort of summarizing this?
Ms. Howarth.
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no further questions or concerns, and I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, any other questions or debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council proceed with the removal of the municipal reserve designation from approximately 157 meters squared of plan 9620706, block 1, lot 40 MR, 137 Mayor Street as shown on the municipal reserve disposal map, and that council direct administration to convert approximately 157 meters squared of plan 9620706, block 1, lot 40 MR, 137 Mayor Street as shown on the municipal reserve disposal map to road right of way.
Point of clarification, Your Worship. I apologize, but it's the mover of the motion is mislabeled. It was Councillor Hawes, not myself.
Thank you for that, Councillor Magoon. Ms. Anderson, if we can just switch that to Councillor Hawes, please. And well, thank you, and I won't repeat that. Council, any further comments or debate before I call to question without repeating it? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, thank you, administration and council. Our second action item is proposed policy CS 7200, recreation and parks user fee policy. Ms. Howarth.
Thank you. So the recreation and parks user fees are set by policy in 3-year increments. The current fees are expiring in July of this year, and administration proceeded with a review of the policy and fee schedules that were presented to Standing Committee on April 13th of this year. At the direction of council, public feedback was collected and the survey summary has been provided on page 31 of your package tonight, as well as attachment 4, which is on page 57 of your agenda. We'll note there is one change that we wanted to point out just to be completely transparent that was made to Schedule B from the previous version that council saw on April 13th. And it was in response to some feedback that we received during the feedback process around, we've added the word rental onto the category header on page 51. And that is just to be clear that the fees apply to the rental of these green spaces, not to the general public use of them. So there is no fee to go and use our playgrounds unless you want to rent them and use them privately. We appreciate that because we've never had anybody question or challenge that in the past. It's not a new component of our proposed policy or schedules this time around. So the recommended action remains that council approve policy CS 7200, Recreation and Parks User Fee Policy, including the 2021 to 2024 fee schedules A and B as presented. I do have Mr. Von Claveren and Ms. Donnet that have joined the meeting to support any questions from council. And I believe if I may, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I think we might have 3 additional feedback comments that we received from between when the report was submitted to the agenda and when it closed. So if I may invite Mr. Von Claveren to speak to those and share them with council and the public, and then we can move on to other questions council may have. Thank you.
Mr. Van Claveren.
Thank you, Chair, and through to council. Yeah, I will just basically read out those comments. First of all, there were 3 additional responses. All 3 indicated that they read the policy. 1 was in favor of the proposed fees, 2 were not. And they provided in total 4 comments that I will read out. So the first respondent comment was, it looks like we are probably getting a new pool facility within the foreseeable future. Is there any way to make the experience more enjoyable? There are no new toys for the kids to play with. Having all the rubber ducks is something that my kids played with, and they are now 35 years old. Stupid that my grandkids now have to play with the same when there are more options available. Start thinking outside the box and put on some fun events. Very rarely are any new larger toys put out. The second respondent had 2 comments. The first one, the facility admissions keep rising, but the facility is falling further into disrepair. Using this formula 15 years ago may have provided a fair exchange of value, but this is no longer holds true. The pool is on its last legs and fees should be lowered until a replacement occurs. The second part of additional comments was from the same person. I understand that you feel justified charging those amounts, arguing that they are paying for the entire facility for 1 day, but no one uses the facility to that extent. You visit the pool, you go skating, you don't go swimming, following with racquetball and finish with some wall climbing. So the fees should reflect actual, not possible usage. The third respondent responded with this. I would like to see an amendment to fees charged to nonprofit clubs. For the first year of incorporation, there should be no fees to rent rooms at the rec center. It seems like the very least the town could do to encourage new organizations. Additionally, nonprofits should be provided with at least 1 night of free rental for AGMs. Watching a nonprofit struggle on Facebook this past year to find a place to host an AGM was embarrassing. That concludes those additional 3 survey responses.
Thank you, Mr. Van Claveren, for sharing those. And with that, I'll go to council. Any questions or directions? Councillor Hawes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick question because I was going to ask about the rental of the playgrounds, of course, because it was there. But just to clarify, so that is a possibility for a community member if they wanted to host a birthday party, especially during the times of restrictions, potentially an outdoor area, they could rent a community park if they chose to, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Sorry,
and I think it's just, I'm not sure how much of the community may be aware of that. So just to highlight that as well. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to start first by apologizing to council primarily and administration. When this was originally debated in standing committee on the 13th of April, I was away due to a COVID emergency at work, so I didn't get a chance to be involved in that standing committee meeting. So if there are things that were discussed or I missed during that conversation, please excuse me and feel free to let me know your opinions and thoughts and fill me in. In going through this particular item on the agenda, I do have some high level concerns that I'm wondering if council has considered or addressed. Primarily is when I look at our competitors and maybe that's not a great term to use, in neighboring communities, I am concerned about our comparables. Two examples like Edson and Jasper, our closest neighbors, especially when it comes to the rate breakdown and how we compare. That's my first concern. My second concern, which would certainly alleviate that to a certain extent, was there any discussion or consideration about the incorporation of free passes to citizens in our community, like punch passes, who find themselves economically disadvantaged, especially given the realities of COVID? I think that's something that we can and should look at. I know, again, for me, that would certainly soften the blow of increasing fees. But again, I sort of looked at council and would like to hear what the general will of council is on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, Councillor Hawes?
Sorry, I go from one screen to the other and can't get to the mute fast enough. I guess to that extent, I think if I recall, but Ms. Haworth, to question, I guess, to administration, but FCSS has different programs potentially that they could either get subsidized or potentially, if they are to get passes per se, but if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that was something that we had heard in the past. But if you could speak to that possibly.
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Hawes. Yes, actually, it's through we do have some partnerships with the FCSS service branch, but directly through the rec center, we have for many years had a program that supports families that come and share their concern with us and their inability to either take swimming lessons or to use our facility. And we do have a line in the budget that is approved every year to support those families to have access to the rec center. I know that we also discussed that with the promotional program that council supported a couple months ago as well during COVID, but since we've been opened up. So yes, please direct them to the rec center, either to Mr. Van Claveren or directly to Ms. Donat, and we can definitely help those families out.
Mr. Hawes?
Yeah, so if I can follow up, I mean, obviously we're as a town willing to work with our community members to try and give them as much accessibility as possible. So, I mean, I hear what Councillor Magoon is saying, and I agree, in these times, and and we are doing the subsidized as it is right now, but there is opportunities that are out there. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Cover.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Admin, are you able to speak on the criteria that people have to meet, should they need the pool and don't have the money to pay?
Ms. Howard?
Thank you. I will dare to compare ourselves to the food bank in the sense that we don't ask for people's T4s or incomes or anything like that. We assume that coming forward with your family is quite a humbling experience to do that as it is, and we make that as easy as possible for them. We have not been challenged with having to sort of negotiate those kind of situations in the past for any length of time. So we don't have written out criteria or forms that have to be filled out. You come in, you have a conversation, and we make that as easy as we can.
Councillor Race?
Thank you, sir. I'm good.
Thank you. Council, we still don't have a motion on the floor. If any direction, Councillor Nelson.
A clarifying question and likely a motion. If this is approved today with the recommendation, we're still able to go back and change it through the budget process If we learn more by then, we have a year of really no data or information, and some things could change between now and when we approve the 2022 budget.
Ms. Howarth?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Nelson. That is correct. While it's a 3-year, we set the fees in 3-year increments for anticipation for our planning, and more importantly for the user groups, that they can plan ahead for their seasons. It is always a potential point of discussion during budget when we're trying to balance budgets and be responsive to the situation that's going on in the community.
Mr. Mayor, if I could follow up. With that in mind, understanding there's lots we don't know about the upcoming budget, I would like to make the motion that council approve policy CS 7200, recreation and parks user fee policy, including 2021 to 2024 fee schedules A and B as presented. I don't really need to speak to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. I'll go to Councillor Magoon in a moment. I'll be speaking in favor of this. I think a 0% increase for the first year, 2% for the following 2 years indicates that we already subsidize this program. We need to collect this from the users, and there's other avenues. I do hear the people who talked about the comments of not-for-profits struggling. Recently, council committed to put $60,000 towards our community grant program. There's other mechanisms that we can do and use in order to ensure that not-for-profits and people who are struggling to pay for this can access our facilities. But the overall framework of our fee system, 0%, 2 and 2 over 3 years, I think is good. And as Councillor Nelson and other councillors alluded to, we can address this if there's a true passion or will to change this. So I'll strongly support this. Councillor Magoon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this time I can't support it. I think in the discussions with the folks I've had in the community, it's not so much the increases to the user fees that I'm seeing, but it's how there's essentially a tandem part that a lot of community members that I've spoken to feel is missing. And that's, the promotion of the programs within the rec center itself and examining other avenues we have, especially given the context of COVID, for promoting and making it easier for citizens in our community. Again, I'm not necessarily against the user fee policy, but I think that council and administration could delve deeper into that. And again, I appreciate the work that council and admin has done thus far. And I apologize for missing out on the 13th due to an emergency work concern. I just think there's more work that can be done and should be done to the citizens' benefit. So at this time, I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question the council approved policy CS 7200, recreation and parks user fee policy, including a 2021 to 2024 fee schedules A and B as presented. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried 5-1. Council, any other, anything else for this item for this evening? Seeing none, thank you, council and administration. That'll bring us to our third item for this evening, aquatics promotional programs rates subsidization. Ms. Howarth.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So council has provided subsidization support for users of the aquatics promotional program. It started, the subsidization began on March 2nd, and it was further extended on April 6th and to today. Council requested that a report regarding the current service levels and budget impacts of the promotional program be brought to this meeting. And that also administration provide options for maybe adjusting the hours at the Dr. Duncan Murray Recreation Center. As such, the report highlights that about 85 to 95% of the booking use of the aquatics promotional program has been used. And the report also offers 4 options labeled A through D on page 61 of your package for your consideration. As you can imagine, there are numerous combinations and permutations of how you can put those options together. And we've tried to simplify that as easily as we can for council. And the there's an equal number, I guess, of financial implications depending on how you piece those options together. And we've provided that in your attachment as well. At this time, administration is recommending option A, which is status quo, the continued subsidization being supported from most funding, as well as option D, which is to close Friday during the day in order to create service hour capacity on Sunday, where that direct increased expenses would be recuperated from the most funding as well. I have Mr. Van Claveren in the meeting as well here to support any questions you have, and which I welcome now.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council, any questions or direction? Councilor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion. And it would be option C. Wendy?
C.
And that's the
Would be
extra,
option, yeah.
the extra opening in the weekend
So
with a minimum shift of 4 hours.
that was the suggestion.
No. So, Mr. Mayor, if I may clarify through to Councillor Magoon, your suggestion is option C, which is to open in the weekend a minimum of 4-hour shift?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So we have to create that into so it's option 2, and then we would plug in the options.
Okay, so I'll just, I have options. I'll just put that.
Okay.
I'll just have a look at that.
So Ms. Howarth or Ms. Anderson, are there any additions to the second paragraph there to indicate Councillor Magoon's choice?
Yes, I think you have it in the right place there, Ms. Anderson. So where your cursor is, that would be option C. And then you can remove everything in the brackets, correct. And then, Mr. Mayor, if Councillor Magoon could give us some suggestions on the second half, the second motion, that would be great as well.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I believe the report had indicated that the estimated costs were all accurate up to June the 15th, 2021. So that would be the date, because again, I'd like to make sure that we're sticking with the data that's been provided.
Perfect. With those changes, Councillor Magoon, are you comfortable with the motion in front of you?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could speak to it, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think in speaking to members of the public, the first concern, of course, is to, think about what direction the province is going to be going over the next couple of weeks. And of course, we can't guess that. Ultimately, though, what I'd love to do is give citizens in the community a chance to take advantage of this. And very obviously, this has been very successful so far. We've had a large number of people taking advantage of this. Of course, the drawback is, like any time of year, it is expensive to run an aquatics program in an aquatic center. It is just one of those programs that costs some money. And if we want to extend those hours, it's going to cost us something. And in this case, really, we're looking at a little bit more than $2,000 over what we're already providing in order to keep that program going during the week. I'd like to see some of our kids and some of our youth have additional time to take advantage of that. And I think offering a Saturday program is the most realistic expectation, understanding, the youth and what their schedules look like. So I'll turn the rest over to council and see if council's willing to support that, or if council has any other ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon, and thank you, Ms. Howarth and Ms. Anderson, for working on that on the fly there. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Race and Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Has there been a certain amount of the most money allocated to the aquatic center, or do you at the end of the month or a certain period just go and recoup from most what you have lost?
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I would like to defer that to Mr. Von Claveren. I'm not exactly sure on how we're operationally doing that on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and to Councillor Race. So basically, since the motion was that we, from the most money, can recoup the 50% of the promotional program, that's the amount we're gonna basically invoice towards the most reserves. So only what has been used by the public will be subsidized by the most funding. So we do that basically on a monthly and most likely on a maybe monthly or even longer period of time. So it's not a set amount, it's based on the usage by the people coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Van Claveren. Councillor Race?
That's good, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Hawes and Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I'm in support of this. I think, we have had a lot of people using it and even waiting to get in. I think so. We've had a good turnout, and unfortunately, there's only so more hours in the week, and people, may not fit their schedules. I think it's reasonable that a weekend, minimum of 4 hours. It then opens up the opportunity for those that are unable to. So, yes, it is additional cost, and I appreciate. I'm not sure of administration's reasoning around potentially looking at option D, but it is the less of the budget on it. But I think for our citizens, option C is a good option. So I'll be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Nelson.
I'd like to propose an amendment. And Ms. Anderson is just at the end, starting with an and. So, and that a request for decision be brought to the regular meeting of council June 8th that contains usage and updated most funding numbers.
Councillor Nelson, are you good with that wording?
Yeah, I think so. If I could speak to it, council. The June 15th date is okay timeline. I potentially could support something that is longer, but it times up with a standing committee meeting. I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity to extend it without having the pressure of calling a special meeting. And I also really want to know where we're at with those most numbers, how much we've subsidized it to date. And also we'll have a month and a bit worth of data on usage on those weekends and can make a good decision. Potentially it could take us through the summer. I don't imagine we're going to have a significant lessening of COVID restrictions anytime soon. And having some certainty, if you wanted to plan for it beyond June 15th, I think would be good. And considering we have a limited number of council meetings during the summer, looking at June 8th could be a great opportunity to basically extend it out through September. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we have an amendment on the floor. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very appreciative of that. I think it's good. It gives us an opportunity to track some stats and some data, which helps the decision-making process. So thank you, Councillor Nelson, for that.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Councillor Nelson, is your amendment just requesting how much money the recreation center has, been allotted from or invoiced from most?
Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, the goal is to know how much of our most funding has been utilized to cover the reduced rates and the subsidies that we've previously received.
Yeah, so just from this specific area. Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nelson, for this amendment. I think it's reasonable, definitely, because I mean, it would be good to know what's out of that most fund and moving forward. And, you know, eventually those funds are going to run dry. So we need to know where we're at. And I agree that we don't know where COVID restrictions are going to be. So it's good to have that idea going into this and how much longer maybe we could sustain this. So I'm in agreement to the motion. Thank you, or to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. I'll also be supporting this. Nothing to add. I think this will put us in a good position on the 8th to better understand where we are. Council, anything further on the amendment portion before I call that to question? Seeing none. Call to question to amend that a request for decision be brought to the regular meeting of council June 8th, 2021 that contains usage and updated most funding numbers. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Now we have a combined motion with the amendment. Council, any further debate? I'll be speaking in favor of this. To me, this is 6 weeks. It'll be about $2,900. This offers flexibility for families, individuals to use this on weekends. Some people haven't been able to use this during the week, and I thank Councillor Magoon for choosing this option. And it's not permanent, so we can revisit this and see where we're at. But I think this is it answers what the community has been seeking to a great program. So I do want to thank administration. Originally, this is a great concept, a great program. Council, anything further before I call to question? Seeing none. A call to question that council directed administration to further extend the subsidization of the aquatics promotion program rates of $20 for non-members, $10 for members per half hour by 50% until the end of day June 15, 2021, and recuperate lost revenues from most funds. That council direct administration to increase the hours of bookings available in the Duncan Murray Recreation Center to include option C until the end of day June 15, 2021, and recuperate the increased direct expenses from most funds, and that a request for decision be brought to the regular meeting of council June 8, 2021 that contains usage and updated most funding numbers. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question on most money. I don't know if it's appropriate to bring it up right now. Could I?
It depends what your question is, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, to administration. And if you don't know the answer, that's totally fine. Would you have any idea how many areas right now are dipping in or utilizing most money? And also how much untouched most money is still available?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor. My answer to Councillor Race. I do not have that information at my fingertips. The only money that has been spent from that allocation has been the funds that have been allocated through and by council. We can certainly get that together for you and either send out an email to council, unless you want something formal come back through a meeting. We can get that to you.
Councillor Race.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. An email would work perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race and Ms. Howard. Council, anything further for this item this evening? Seeing none, again, thank you, Council and Administration. That'll bring us to our fourth action item for this evening. Rescind Council Motion MD 2050 infill policy. Ms. Howard. Councillor Nelson, was there a point of?
Yeah, possibly, Mr. Chair. With this being raised due to exceptional circumstances, and that coming from Councillor Stashik, and he's expected to join later in the meeting, I'm just wondering if it would make sense to shift this to later. I'm fine either way, but just out of respect for Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson, for that. And I have not got indication from Councillor Stashik on an update. So I would be okay to support moving this to our last item if there's a will of council to do so in the event that he could join us. With that, I guess I'll go to Ms. Howarth. Just simply a motion to move this to the last item.
Yes,
Proceed.
yes, you betcha that.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
I'll move that action item 4, rescind council motion MD 2050, be moved to the last action item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Nelson, for that. That'll be our 7th item. Our new 4th item is the tax rate bylaw 1155 and supplementary bylaw 1156. Ms. Howarth.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. So it's that time of year for our tax rate bylaw and our supplementary bylaw, both of which are requirements of the Municipal Government Act. I would like to introduce Rob Osmond, who is supporting the process this year. I'm going to basically jump right into it and invite him, if I may, Mr. Chair, to take the next 10 minutes to present his report. We'll follow up with, of course, an offer to answer any questions that council may have to support your understanding and your decision this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Howarth, and welcome, Mr. Osmond.
Thank you very much. I appreciate having the time this evening to run through 2 bylaws, the tax rate bylaw and the supplementary taxation bylaw. So I recognize that taxation and the ins and outs of this subject are not everybody's area of expertise. So I do have a bit of a presentation. Take me a few minutes to run through this evening, but my goal here is to give you a big overview of what the picture looks like. And then if council has further questions, hopefully I can help you out with that as well. So I've been asked in my capacity as strategic financial support for the town of Hinton to present these 2 bylaws this evening. I'd like to start with a conversation about the supplementary assessment bylaw. Sections 313 to 316.1 of the MGA provide the municipal council with the authority to pass a bylaw that allows the assessment and subsequent taxation of developments and improvements that are completed in the year. Without this bylaw, anything that is completed within the year, because it wasn't assessed in the prior year's assessment, is not taxed. So this opportunity is available to council. It has been the town of Hinton's process to have a supplementary tax each year. That bylaw must be passed by council annually. And although council does have the ability to revisit the supplementary taxation process each year, I will mention that often an inconsistent application of supplementary tax can feel to the average taxpayer as fairly unequal. So if my development built last year wasn't taxed and your development built this year was, that would feel rather unequal. And so it is often, once a supplementary tax is in place, that it is applied consistently by the community. The timing of this bylaw is mandated by the MGA, and therefore the decision on supplemental taxation made this evening will not be able to be reviewed until the 2022 tax year. Administration is asking for all 3 readings of this bylaw today. If 3 readings are not provided, a consideration for a special meeting of council will likely be required due to the timeline constraints on passing one of these bylaws. So that's kind of the full story on the assessment piece. The taxation bylaw I have a little bit more to talk about. So unlike the supplementary assessment bylaw, which is at the discretion of council, a tax rate bylaw is a mandatory legislative requirement under the MGA. The tax rate bylaw establishes 3 important rates. The first is the municipal property tax rate. The municipal tax rates are the solution that collects from the municipal assessment the funds required to meet the obligations of the approved annual operating budget of the town. The second group of rates are the provincial education tax rates or school tax rates. This is the solution that collects the requisition, the money requirement established by the provincial government for education in Alberta. I will speak a little bit more about the requisition and the equalized assessment tool that's used to collect that in a few moments. The third set of rates that we talk about here are the Senior Housing Authority rates. So in the town of Hinton, the authority is the Evergreens Foundation. The senior housing rates are the solution that collects the requisition established by the Evergreens Foundation. And that process, like the education tax, is protected in legislation. And those numbers are provided to the municipality. The municipality does not directly control or decide on those numbers. So it is only the municipal rates that are under the authority and control of the town and council. The other requisitions are established by those authorities, and it is the town's role to collect in an in and out style transaction to collect these funds from our residents, the property owners within the community on behalf of those authorities. Administration is asking for all three readings of the tax rate bylaw today. If three readings are not provided, consideration for a special meeting will be required due to legislative timeline requirements governing property taxation, the issuance of tax notices, and the expectations that taxpayers have about the timely delivery of those notices. As well, if this process is delayed, it can create some difficulties, not just with the notices, but also tax deadlines, penalties, tax collection, assessment complaints, and the tax recovery process. So we are looking for all three readings this evening. All right, so a little bit more on municipal rates. The 2021 operating budget was approved with a revenue requirement for municipal taxation of $12,873,022. This is a 0.98% decrease from the 2020 budget revenue requirement, which is quite an achievement given the worldwide pandemic and the other pressures on municipalities. So that started this whole calculation off on a very positive footing. Early in 2021, the assessment was finalized. It calculated an average 1.82% decrease across all classes. Administration estimated that the average assessment adjusted impact of the average residential and non-residential property, what I refer to as the bottom line projections, at the time were for an average residential property to see a $17 or a 0.9% decrease on the average tax bill, and the average non-residential property to see a $497 or 4.7% decrease in the municipal component. The year-to-year comparison of the municipal tax rates was 0.85% for the municipal component, leaving with us with 5.4578 mills for residential and 9.2782 for non-residential properties. So the school tax, the province has continued to hold the overall educational property tax they collect in the province at 2019 levels. Although the overall amount of taxes collected has remained steady, the requisitioned amount from individual municipalities will continue to shift as a result of equalized assessment. So equalized assessment is the tool that the provincial government uses to bring in equity when comparing assessment rolls between communities in the province of Alberta. It looks at the assessments themselves and compares them to what it considers to be a provincial average, giving them a score of essentially between 90 to 110% of the average, adjusting those rates accordingly, and then retooling the requisition amounts based on that adjusted equalized assessment. It is a very complicated process, but essentially what it comes down to is that the individual municipalities' assessment as changes, as well as changes to the equalized assessment across the province, and the relationship of the individual municipalities' assessment in relation to all of the other municipalities all play a role in the actual requisition that we get from the province. And so that's why in the case of Hinton, over the course of 2019 to 2021, where the education requisition to the province as a whole was held, that we've seen a 9.9% increase, or $431,562 increase in the education tax requirement that Hinton collects on behalf of the province. This came to a head in particular because in 2020, the increases to, or the recalculation of the requisitions as a result of the equalized assessment occurred in June. The historical time for this to happen is typically between February and April. However, in 2020, likely due to pressures from COVID, the province recalculated them in June, which unfortunately came after the tax rate bylaw was passed and notices were sent to residents. As a result, the change in requisition for last year was not included in last year's tax notice. So you have a 2-year change being driven by the equalized assessment changes, all impacting in 2021 because the changes came too late in 2020 to be incorporated in your rates. So the bottom line here is that following the recalculation for the new requisition, education property tax levy for residential properties is calculated at 3.0588 mils. And for anybody who is unfamiliar with the term, the mill is simply the number of dollars for every $1,000 of assessment, and 3.8078 mils for non-residential properties, creating increases in just the school tax component of 24.11 in residential and 36.93% in non-residential. I have always, throughout my career, advised councils that one of the most difficult parts can be recognizing that when we're talking about the education tax component, we're talking about a portion of your total tax rate to your residents that is outside the control of the council. And so there are not really any sustainable or financially responsible ways to kind of manage the impact of these rates for your residents. Because the expectation, of course, is that money that council raises on behalf of the municipality be fed through to municipal services, and not that the town take the responsibility of the increased education tax and be collecting monies at a municipal level for provincial services like education. So those are the two big chunks that I wanted to talk about. The total tax rate picture on page 3 of the report, or 73 of the agenda package, there's a graph, the 2021 total tax increase by source. And here I've graphed the mill rate increases of both residential and non-residential by their source. And you can see on these graphs, you've got a relatively small layer on top of the municipal component. You've got a very small layer for housing. And then you have the big story of where the total change in tax rates is being driven. And it's being driven on this education tax component side. So the average assessment adjusted impact, those bottom line projections, now that they've been recalculated for the updated education tax requisition, are now for a residential property on average, to see an average residential property on average, to see an increase of $177 on their tax bill overall, which works out to be approximately 6.1%. And on the non-residential side, an average non-residential property to see $435 or a 3% increase. The year-to-year comparison of the total tax rates straight off the bylaw is for a 7.92% increase in the residential rate to 8.9719, and a 9.05% increase on the non-residential tax rate to 13.5414. So I will provide council with the caution that when looking at those bottom line projections, you have to keep in mind that changes in assessment are not uniform across the assessment. They're not even uniform across properties that are grouped in the same class. You can, in fact, find properties of a similar age and size in one area of town that see a different impact from the market than you do in another area of town. So although we talk about this being the average of an average property, particularly in the non-residential side, there will be many more not average properties. Although this gives you a guide to understand kind of where we land, I caution council, certainly you will likely have residents reach out and say, well, you know, in the presentation, they talked about 435 and my number is not 435. And that's what it is. It's just that it's not even across the board. All right. So that's the extra pieces in addition to the report that I wanted to talk about this evening. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to help address them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond, and thank you for being part of the organization. I know you're very familiar with the town of Hinton, so we're happy to have you. With that, I have Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To administration. So I think it was back in 2019, we passed our tax rate bylaw. And then shortly thereafter, we received information that we had a overassessment of over $500,000, which caused us a little bit of grief with our citizens. Do we have all the information we need right now, all the financial information, no more is coming to us, to make a good decision tonight or to pass this?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Race. I want to say the short answer is yes, and I would invite Mr. Osmond to confirm and enhance that.
Thank you very much to Councillor Race through the chair. The answer to the question is yes. We have the most current and up-to-date information available in all the areas. We have made calculations for any adjustments that needed to be made. The rates that are provided in the bylaw this evening collect, based on the assessment numbers we have today, the revenue requirement required by the budget and the requisitions required by the province and the housing authority. That is not to say that those numbers can't change, but they are accurate today.
Thank you, administration. Councillor Race, are you good with that?
I'm good with that, and thank you, sir, and welcome aboard, and I'm glad you're here for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, any, Councillor Nelson?
Yeah, I can't remember if it's every year, but most years in the spring, Powers and Associates comes out and presents the assessments and where the changes have been, what increase, what decrease, what part of the community they did, what methods they used. I was just curious, ultimately that's what can change the tax rate bylaw, and that's where we got caught up a couple of years ago. I was just curious if that's happening this year, and if not, if there was an intention behind it, or if it was just something that didn't feel like it was required.
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Nelson. I'm not aware that that is our intention to do this year. I know often that is prompted by the increases that happen to quite a severe extent. And I will defer to Mr. Osmond as well to see if he's had any affirmation of that internally, speaking with our finance and corporate services in the last week that he's been here. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Councillor Nelson through the chair. I was going to make the same comment that I've only been assisting the organization for about a week, but I will talk in generalities what I've seen in other places. Often the assessor is brought in or provides that type of report to council when there's been a significant change in method, or if there's been a significant change in the results. So the 1.82% change in assessment when the assessment was finalized back at the end of February, it is not what I would consider a massive change. And so it could just be that in this case, those numbers didn't seem to merit it. But that's not to say, I mean, the assessor is, if they aren't already, will be shortly starting their process on the assessment. And if council desired request to have a report summarizing the major themes of the assessment for this year could be provided.
Councillor Nelson?
I'm okay for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any questions or direction? Councillor Nelson?
So I thought there might be others in the queue. I guess then to follow up with that, just a really direct question. There's no further assessment changes that could impact our tax rate bylaw or the amount that we collect. Is that a correct understanding?
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Nelson. I will defer that entire answer to Mr. Osmond if he has it available. If not, administration can get that information for you at a later time.
To Councillor Nelson through the chair, that's a great question. So the answer is that there is nothing after council gives third reading of the tax rate bylaw that can change the tax rates for the year. There is, however, an open period of appeal of assessments. And those appeals, if they are create adjustments to the assessment, can change the revenue. And that's why each year we start this process of setting tax rates with an over-under calculation. So if there was to be a small loss of assessment as a result of those appeals, we would then make the adjustments required next year. But nothing would change the rates from this point forward.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the queue, Mayor Michaels?
Councillor Magoon?
Okay,
I'll actually withdraw if Councillor Nelson has a question. I was just going to look to proceed to first reading.
I have Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I think it's just for a little bit of further clarification to administration. You know, and to be clear, I realize that with the education tax, we have no control over that. But that significant increase, just to clarify again, so it was nothing that our community did any different or anything than normal, but it was the province who delayed delayed the calculation until June rather than, say, you said January or February, and we missed out on that where it would have been stretched over a couple of years. Is that correct, administration? Just to clarify for our community members who see that increase on their education taxes specifically.
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Haas. That is correct. Instead of having that notice before our tax bylaws was set last year, we have now, it's been compounded and has to be recovered in 1 year instead of spread out over 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that it was nothing different of our organization. It was due to COVID and provincial differences of calculation. So, and I'm sure that we were not the only community that were hit by that combined there as well. So, all right. Thank you, administration.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Magoon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make the motion that council give first reading of tax rate bylaw number 1155.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon.
If I may speak to it just very briefly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, again, this is just part of our regular tax rate process. However, it is frustrating when as a council, understanding the context of COVID, ourselves, administration, we work hard to ensure that the overall tax burden on our citizens at this time, given this context, is negligible. And I think everybody has done a lot of hard work to achieve that, as Mr. Osmond mentioned at the beginning of his presentation. However, to the average Joe or Jane on the street who gets their final tax bill and they do see that increase, their first question is, of course, going to be, why are my taxes going up? And we've been through this every year that I've been a counselor. And the answer is, of course, especially this year, it has to do with that large amount of money that's being requisitioned on behalf of the education. And honestly, there comes a time when you have to say things a little frankly, and people have to hold the provincial government to account and say, look, you delayed last year, and this is having a larger impact on me this year, which is probably a really terrible year for the average, taxpayer to have to pay an increased share of an educational requisition. And again, who gets to collect that money? Not the province, the municipalities. So again, this is about transparency. So if we do have citizens watching this or discussing this with their friends and family in town who are taxpayers, a little clarification in that the province could have done things better and more transparently and a little more efficiently. And then, that tax burden could have been distributed across 2 years rather than 1. So again, as a municipality, we've worked hard to insulate our citizens, but we're left holding the bag a little bit for the province. And I think, they need to take some responsibility for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. I'll be speaking in favor of this. The number I looked at right away was $12,873,022, making sure that number was the same. The assessments played less of a role, I believe, in 2019. It was just that the amount was actually changed from our budget document. That was the big concern. Assessments, up or down, they're spread around, differently throughout, but we all pay for it in one way or the other, depending on our individual assessments. But that number is the same. Our mill rates are locked in at 5.45 and 9.27. We've done our part, as Councillor Magoon said. I look forward to how administration is going to lay this out on a piece of paper that shows our portion, the school's portion, maybe color code it. There's all kinds of things we can do to really show what we do. But I'm with Councillor Magoon. At the end of the day, we are going to take the phone calls for this. And we've done our part, I believe, as a municipality, keeping our numbers low. But unfortunately, there's some higher numbers there. So we'll just have to do our part and explain it. So, but I do look forward to supporting this. Councillor Haas.
Yes, and I'll support this as well. And just, I agree, with Councillor Magoon's assessment. Obviously, it is a provincial lens and the provincial's feet, our government there. And knowing too, the AMA has, they've been attempting to try and lobby to, that the province collect those taxes versus the municipalities. Because, at the end of the day, yeah, it comes on their bill, our bill, but it's not associated to us. And I know the AMA has been trying through various communications that I've seen. But unfortunately, it's not getting very far with our provincial government. So, but I think it's really important our citizens know that, and when I look at the report, I see decrease under the municipal component of it, and the two provincials are increased. And I think that's really important to highlight. So, and I too am supportive of this as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodge. Council, we have a motion on the floor for first reading. Any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give first reading of the tax rate bylaw 1155. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any appetite for another direction today? Councillor Hawes? You are muted.
Pardon me. I'd like to move, and if Wendy, if I can just have you bring it up. Thank you. The council gives second reading to tax rate bylaw number 1155. And I've already spoken to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a motion on the floor for second reading. Any further debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council gives second reading of tax rate bylaw 1155. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, appetite for another direction? Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council give unanimous consent for third reading of tax rate bylaw 1155.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Nelson.
If this doesn't get unanimous consent, when does it need to come back to council for third reading?
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Nelson. I'm sorry, Mr. Osmond, I know we had talked about that earlier, and we know there is a timeline when our finance department needs to send out those notices. Can you clarify that for me and council?
Mr. Osmond?
Thank you very much to Councillor Nelson through the chair. We are very much at the end of the timeline provided in the legislation. If there was information that needed to be brought back, my recommendation would be that council give administration a day to collect that information and call a special meeting for tomorrow.
If Councillor Nelson doesn't have anything else on that, I'd like to follow up. Not saying that I'm in favor of this, but I do want to have all the options for council on the floor. Would running a concurrent meeting on May 11th and passing it then allow for you to meet your MGA requirements?
To Mayor Michaels, unfortunately, I don't believe that would allow us to get there in time. We are very much at the end of the legislative timeline for a tax rate bylaw and the supplementary tax. So it is fairly urgent that it be passed. And then I don't know the specific deadlines for the mailing, but I'm sure we are right up against it for getting tax notices turned around and out the door to residents.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond. I'm leaning towards, I'm fine passing it today. I think there is an opportunity on the 11th, albeit it would be tight, and I'm sensing a lot of energy and time would have to be allocated to this. I think it would be doable. To my knowledge, there's no date. I think May 11th, it's just more of administrative work and cramming that in order to put out. So that's the reason I elaborate on that question. I think those are the two options. We either pass it tonight. I don't know if there's an appetite for a special meeting tomorrow, but those are my thoughts, Council. Council, Councillor Nelson?
Yeah, I am going to ultimately support this. It makes me extremely uncomfortable passing a bylaw of this nature, especially one that's in the past with this council caused a lot of issues. And to pass all three readings without an assessment presentation and without our permanent CAO and without our Director of Corporate Services present, to me creates a lot of risk for the organization, but I think we create just as much risk for the organization not passing this. So ultimately it's either a decision I'm uncomfortable with or a bad decision. So I'll just go with the one I'm uncomfortable with. And hopefully in the future, we can, it'll be not this council, but hopefully in the future, councils can be a little bit more on top of our calendars to make sure we're not up against these kinds of deadlines. I just don't think it's fair. I don't think it gives the citizens enough time to reach out to their councils and for council to go out to their citizens and ask a lot of questions. So as much as it causes me a lot of discomfort, I will be supporting third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To administration, I think Mr. Osmond said if there was an issue, then we would have, Powers and Associate come and do a presentation to us. But this year, because everything is good, we're not requesting that. Am I correct in saying that?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Councillor Race. That is correct. We're not hearing that well up in the community. And there is not a significant change in what was done either in process or in percentage that's resulted in this year. So we don't consider that a significant information that would warrant a delay in the decision tonight of council.
Thank you.
Ms. Howard, thank you, Councillor Race. Council, we have a motion on the floor for unanimous consent. Any further debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give unanimous consent for third reading of the tax rate bylaw 1155. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, I'll entertain another motion or questions. Councillor Nelson.
I'll move that council give first reading of supplementary assessments bylaw 1156. And if I could speak to it, this is the exact same document as we've passed in previous years, just with the dates changed.
Sorry, point of clarification. Did Councillor Race's motion include the third reading?
Oh,
also?
sorry. I'll go back.
My apologies for interrupting there.
No, I appreciate that. I'll make the motion that council gives third reading to tax rate 1155. I think I do this every single time we give unanimous consent, so I'll keep doing it from this point forward. So thanks, everyone.
Consistency is overlooked. It's important. Council, we have a motion on the floor for third reading. This just takes majority consent. Any questions or comments or debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council gives third reading to the tax rate bylaw 1155. Council, all those in favor? That's also passed unanimously. And with that, Councillor Nelson.
I'd like to move that council give first reading of supplementary assessments bylaw number 1156. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give first reading of supplementary assessment bylaw 1156. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the council give second reading of supplementary assessments bylaw number 1156.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate or questions? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give second reading of supplementary assessment bylaw 1156. Council, all those in favor? That is also passed unanimously. Council, Councillor Nelson.
I'll move that council give unanimous consent for third reading of supplementary assessments bylaw 1156. I don't really need to speak to it. I think everybody knows exactly how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Any debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council give unanimous consent of third reading of supplementary assessment bylaw 1156. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Now, perhaps I'll give Councillor Nelson an opportunity. Oh, Councillor Race. You're muted.
Thank you, sir. I was going to make our third motion. I'd like to move that council give third reading to supplementary bylaw 1156.
Thank you, Councillor. Also, any debate or questions? And just to clarify, the assessment part is in there also, Councillor Race? You'd skip that. You're muted. I just want to confirm that it's supplementary assessment bylaw 1156.
Yes, yes, sir.
Council, any questions or debate? Seeing none, I'll call to question. The council give third reading of supplementary assessment bylaw 1156. Council, all those in favor? That is passed unanimously. Council, anything further for this item? Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question to administration, because I've had a number of people reach out to me wondering when they're going to get their tax notices. So while that this is passed, when will our citizens be expecting those tax notices in the mail?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. We're all looking at each other. I'm not sure the exact date of that. Again, it's something we can get out to council in an email, but we'll definitely maybe send something out to the public as well now that council's passed the 2 bylaws and they can watch for it in the mail.
I think that's, if I may, I think that much appreciated. It's not necessary to know exact date, but I think just so our citizens know, that they're on their way and, maybe even a ballpark potentially, but I think that'll be suffice. So thank you, administration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, anything further for this action item? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Osmond, for your first work here. We appreciate it and looking forward to a lot more and hearing some stories from Councillor Magoon about you. So we look forward to that. Thank you, administration. That'll bring us to our next action item, which is COVID-19 Business Resilience Support Program report. Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to council. So this item was before standing committee on April 20th, where administration was provided direction regarding the criteria of the COVID-19 Business Resilience Support Program. Since then, we have been contacted by Community Futures West Yellowhead. They reached out and offered some administrative support for the implementation of the program. And so under this model, the town can really effectively and efficiently support the business community impacted by COVID-19. The recommendation of administration is that council approve the COVID-19 Business Resilience Support Program of $100,000 for local goods and services program funded by the Emergency Operations Reserve with the grant criteria and eligibility that as presented in the report. Further to that is we recommend that council approve the town of Hinton to enter into an agreement with the Community Futures West Yellowhead to administer the COVID-19 Business Resilience Support Program. We have with us this evening Mr. Kovach as well as Mr. Rousseau. And yes, Ms. Robbins is on the line as well from the Community Futures West Yellowhead to support me in answering any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council. Councilor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually going to start by making a motion. It's not one of the directed ones. However, Wendy, it can come from the bottom of page 100 of 120. And it's council approve a collaborative marketing plan.
Just 1 second. Is it
Sure.
option 2, 3, or 4?
It's not an option. So if you look at the second last paragraph on page 100 of 120, everything from collaborative marketing plan to promote their business.
And I'll let you read that. I do not have.
Sure.
that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll read it out then whenever you're ready. So the motion will read that council approve a collaborative marketing plan of $30,000 that would promote local businesses, working in partnership of 3 or more partners to promote their businesses. Then, Mr. Mayor, if I may speak to that. I know this was an area that was presented to council at standing committee when we initially discussed this. And honestly, it's an area that I don't want to say got lost in the discussion, but I don't think got the focus it deserves in that discussion. In speaking with a number of different business owners in the community, this is an area that is just as important, if not more important, than the grant/bursary program that we've been discussing. We've seen through COVID as an example, there's been a lot of businesses in the community that have banded together to promote their businesses. The outdoor patio sort of promotions as an example. We've seen some safety businesses providing supplies to help get, other restaurants up on their feet, working outdoors, to get citizens in the door. That's just a small example of this. Really, what we're doing through this program is enabling businesses to work together to develop some synergy and promote their businesses, through a fairly inexpensive program. And I've heard that a lot since we met last time. So I wanted to at least make sure that council had the opportunity to take the information that was already reported on by administration and have a decision on it here at a regular council meeting. If it gets support, awesome. If it doesn't get support, fine. What I've heard from the community is that this is something that we haven't touched on yet. And it's an important aspect of supporting our business resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Nelson.
I'd like to move to postpone this. Sorry, I was going to move to postpone it till standing next week, but I don't think I can because it's a motion made it regular and I don't think I can postpone it to a standing committee meeting. With that in mind, I will not support it, not because I don't support the program, but because this wasn't an agenda item that we were expected to discuss. And a couple of weeks ago when it was on the agenda, I had discussed with some businesses, with tourism providers, and I just think making a decision without any of those groups knowing it's on the agenda in a meaningful way is it's not something I'm comfortable with. And it didn't receive any direction at standing at that point. So to push it forward at regular without that ability to seek that feedback from citizens and businesses, I can't support it this time. But I would prefer just to postpone it, but I don't think procedurally I can. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the time of this discussion, I was during the standing committee was excited about this and in support of this. And I guess now to ask the question to administration. Of course, there was some collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development, and Administration. And from that collaboration, I'm assuming this was discussed. And can you give a little bit of insight as to what was the background to this component that was, first introduced to us during standing and now being brought back today?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Hawes. I will refer that to Mr. Kovach, as that was sort of a more robust conversation that happened at a different meeting. So if I may hand that over.
Ms. Howarth, to Mayor Michaels through to Councillor Hawes. So background on this is that when we reached out, and that includes the Chamber of Commerce and myself, when we reached out to about 15 different communities across the province, roughly in our same population range, we had asked them what were the most important top 5 issues that would help them support and pivot through COVID. And inevitably in that top 5 was marketing support, right? And so if you take a look at the report closely, we made reference to Grand Prairie. And Grand Prairie specifically supported outdoor patios and goods and services and a marketing campaign. They've had some fairly good uptake and some good response to that and some success with it. We also reached out locally to a number of businesses and asked their opinion of how important it was. And certainly knowing that tourism is not only a low-hanging fruit, but it's also very important to our local economy, that came up as a top 5 priority as well. And so it was an opportunity possibly for those local businesses to, leverage resources that already exist or that have been sort of diminished over the past little while because of COVID. And, if this continues in the future and there is another intake, which there certainly will be with Travel Alberta in the fall, there'll be an opportunity for them to leverage that against the Travel Alberta cooperative grant process as well. So we had very good support. And I talked with the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, and she had gotten the same response from a number of the members of the Chamber of Commerce as well. I'm hoping that that's answering your question, Councillor Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kovac. Councillor Hawes, I do want to give a quick update to Councillor Stashik, who joined us. We are on the COVID-19 Business Resilience Support Program. No motions have been passed or not passed, but we do have a motion on the floor. If I can ask Ms. Anderson to put it into the chat. It was done by Councillor Magoon. It's not the recommended action, it's a different one. And conversation has just started regarding that. So that's an update on that. And I have Councillor Magoon and Councillor Waugh.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yeah, again, just to clarify, it's not like this is a cold motion, and it's even part of the report that this is an option of council to move this forward. This was discussed. It was just, not moved forward yet at a standing committee meeting. And ultimately, what we're looking at doing is taking something that I've heard very clearly from the business community, and it can certainly be in addition to the $100,000 that is part of the recommended motion, right? And again, it's information, or pardon me, it's a suggested explored action that's already been looked into, not only by administration, but also the Chamber of Commerce. So I certainly know that it wasn't put forward out of a standing committee meeting, but this is something that has been vetted by our Chamber of Commerce. It has been vetted by staff, and ultimately, it's going to be beneficial to supporting businesses moving through COVID for, again, a fraction of the cost of the recommended resiliency program. And they both achieve two different aims. So in my mind, it's a more holistic approach. And I think that's why, we've explored it, and we should stand to put it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for admin. It says in the report that funds could be provided upon approval of the marketing activities. So I guess I'm just because we didn't discuss this in any great detail yet. What sort of marketing activities are you targeting as something that would be approved under this program?
Howard?
Ms. Howarth, through the mayor to Councillor. So basically, what we've done is we've taken a look at, again, what other communities have done and what is a common practice with Travel Alberta. And in any kind of cooperative marketing situation, what happens is obviously you have to have at least 2 or 3 or more individuals with a common goal, and then you have to present the tactics. And typically what I'm looking for, what the community has said would be beneficial, is any of those processes that are involved with specifically social media. Right now, a lot of sales are being generated through social media, through content and development of blogs and any type of real-time marketing opportunities. And so whether it's TikTok or whether it's YouTube, any of those types of interactive media. I mean, I would not suggest that you throw out traditional media, but today with the situation of COVID and utilizing curbside pickups, really e-commerce associated with any type of social media is typically the most successful avenue at this point in time. We can certainly, as administration, bring back more specific details, but I really don't think that that the application would be onerous at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Kovac. Councillor Waugh, anything further?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Nelson, then Councillor Race, and then Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The nice thing with the $100,000 is we made a direction And then it comes back to regular council with what the criteria are so that we can fully understand what we're actually putting forward. And again, that's what I struggle with this. I don't fully understand what the criteria are. I haven't talked to businesses about whether those criteria are right or wrong. I've also heard a lot of feedback from the general community that they think that 30,000 would be better spent on a single bigger campaign to just bring people to Hinton than it would be to, divvy it up at $500 a pop, all going to Facebook ads. That doesn't really multiply within your community as much as, getting people into our community. So I just have a lot of questions at this point. And I don't like making decisions. I like showing up at a meeting prepared and having done the outreach and really knowing and being confident in the way that I'm voting. So again, I would have loved for this to have been postponed, but we're I think past that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Councillor McGowan. Who would oversee this $30,000? Who would set the criteria?
Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Well, again, I'll stress the fact that this was presented by administration. Administration has explored this option. It was presented to us in a report at standing committee. It's been discussed in tandem with the Chamber of Commerce. In the same way that we debated during a special meeting about the details of high-level projects and trying to kick a decision down the road, I would argue we have an opportunity here to make a decision during a very critical time for businesses to say we are going to put this funding towards businesses in our community working together to promote themselves, right? And administration and the chamber have worked that out. From my detail level as a policymaker, it's the why decision. Why am I either going to support this, and why am I not going to support this? For me, administration can handle the details working with the chamber. They've got that under control. They've presented it as an option. I have to assume that they've done their homework. I really doubt administration is going to present a plan to us that is not ready to go. And I haven't heard them say at any point during this line of questioning that it's not ready to go. If they did, I would withdraw the motion. But in this case, I think this is simply another avenue to explore promoting our businesses during a critical time across a number of different levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, sir.
Councillor Race, anything further?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, and I'm hearing all sides of this, and if this were to pass, first of all, is this something that can be incorporated potentially into community futures as well, administrating this lump sum as well? You've already discussed the administration and community futures coming forward on the initial $100,000, but can this also be incorporated into that as well?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Hawes. I will defer that to Mr. Kovach. I assume and trust that he's had some of those conversations and he can speak to that. Thank you.
Ms. Howarth, through the chair to, I apologize, I can't remember which councillor was asking that question. Councillor Baugh?
Hawes.
Okay, or Haas, sorry. Yes, so I can't speak for the general manager of Community Futures, Nancy Robbins, but we have a working relationship, and based on the previous collateral information that we put together for this report, and understanding the administrative capacity that they have, I certainly believe that we could work together. It is, I think, an easy opportunity for us to work together on an application form. And the administration piece. Again, I can't speak on Nancy's behalf, but I think that there's a positive working relationship, and that could be worked out, in a very short turnaround time.
Thank you, Mr. Kovach. Councillor Hawes, anything further? Okay. Councillor Waugh.
Yeah, I've been mulling this over for a little bit since Councillor Magoon made the motion. I can't support it at this time either. In principle, I like the idea, but again, I would like to hear a lot more about what the criteria and the objectives are, I guess. I'm worried about the money possibly leaving the community as opposed to prioritizing some services that can be found here in Hinton, either through contractors or organizations like Community Futures. So I would like to see a little bit more detail before I'd feel comfortable about giving the support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that council refer the motion to standing committee on or before May 18th, 2021. If I could speak to it, I think especially if we're starting to go down the path of potentially talking to Community Futures to administer the program, that would require a motion from that committee, which our next committee meeting is on the 27th. And potentially that could be done and come back then for regular council on the 8th, if that's where we wish to go with that. Because I don't believe that the general manager could make the decision to add on more programs than what was presented to the Community Futures board. It does seem like council has an interest to talk about it more. And I always forget about the wonderful motion to refer. And to me, it's the most appropriate thing at this time for it to go back to standing committee, mull it around. And if we want to go to Community Futures as an administering partner, we have time to do that for the board meeting on May 27th in preparation potentially for regular council on June the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, we now have a motion to refer this. So I will make a separate queue for this. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to support that. I think, again, it respects our partners in the community, especially Community Futures. It's not that much of a delay that we're really talking about several meetings. Again, with mine being the original motion, I'm happy to support this. That gives council a chance to explore their options and make sure that they're giving the best thoughts and the best information as part of their decision-making process. I've always said that's important, and I don't think several weeks is going to be the end of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, anything further for this motion to refer? Seeing none, I'll call to question that council refer the above motion to a standing committee meeting on or before May 18th of 2021. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Council, any other questions or directions for this action item this evening? Councillor Race. You are muted. Councillor Race, you're muted.
I didn't swear. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have something I'd like to bring up. It is not specific to what we're talking about right now, but it is specific to helping out a organization in town with COVID relief.
Yeah. What is your question?
Okay, I've just got to turn this up here. So our March 2nd regular council meeting, we in our information package had a letter from the share shop. They had sent an email to all of council February 16th. So all of us are aware of the request that they made to council. They are in need of rent support. And at that time I had asked, what can we do to help? And it was said that we would be discussing this at our, a COVID relief meeting. I talked to the share shop today. They've heard from no one. We are their landlord. We're the ones they would come to ask us for relief. So I would like to make a motion. And I have to say, at the March 2nd meeting, administration did say that this is an option open to us, and we did not take this option. So I'd like to take it today. I'm hoping that council would support this, motion. So I move to direct administration to bring back a report no later than the end of May on available options to assist the share shop and other renters of town properties. And to quickly speak to that, I really think we have been a bit delinquent in assisting people who we are renting to. I mean, it's been what, 2 months, 2.5 months since the share shop approached us with, requesting relief, saying that they would need help in April, they would need help in May, and we've done nothing. I've heard businesses say, you know what, if their landlord would just work with them to help them with some rent relief. And here, once again, we are the landlord and we've done nothing. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Motion on the floor. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess to this motion, I mean, we did talk about the possibility in our March meeting or in the past meeting about opening up now to community grant to organizations for operations. We lifted that cap of 3 years. So it was discussed at that time that potentially, organizations like the Share Shop could apply for the community grant. And we've, established that there's $60,000 there for 2 intakes. I guess my other question would be is what has the Share Shop, before I would, feel comfortable moving this forward, is what have they done to subsidize? I know a lot of organizations have applied for grants through provinces, but what have they done to subsidize their COVID relief at this point, at this juncture? What kind of initiatives have they done as a board? And I don't recall that being part of the letter specifically, if there is any, if they're just looking for that relief on our part. So I'm open to, but there is that was discussed, and rent was not part of this initiative that we spoke to, but that they could look at the community grant program. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council. Any Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, within the last 2 months, 2.5 months, we've had ample opportunity, any one of us councillors, to go to the Share Shop and say to them, what have you done, to assist yourselves? You're all, what, 60, 70, 80 years old. What have you poor people done to get on the computer and look for relief? You know what, I'm thinking the service that this organization offers our town, and these are people who are volunteering, they don't have to do it, but they're doing it. And now we're saying to them, what have you done to help yourself? We are the landlord. They've come to us like any other tenant would, needing help. And we're saying to them, well, what have you done? So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a question for administration, I guess to Ms. Howarth. Seeing the motion in front of you, what would you bring back, sort of high level? What does this motion say to you, Ms. Howarth?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. A couple things. Bringing it back no later than May 31st. That would mean bringing it to May 18th, which is that's about a 48 or 48-hour turnaround for to get that information together and the report ready to review for Thursday for our reporting timeline. So that would be very difficult with the other priorities that we have right now. And second to that, coincidentally, on Friday, last Friday, We did meet internally with the CAO and a couple of the directors and our frontline supervisors that work with our tenants. And we talked about this specific thing, wondering, where are things at? How are our tenants feeling? Have some come forward, some haven't? And our facilities supervisor, Eva Arsenault, she has worked closely with them. We did bring up that, of course, the share shop had requested some sort of support through council, and at that time we were not directed to follow up specifically, but they are one of many, not many, we're not landlords for lots of areas, but we do have quite a list. And so we have since gathered a list of all of our relationships that we have in agreements that way, and we're working through basically the inventory of that, connecting with them, seeing where they're at, how they're feeling. And at the very least, we are going to be including that in our quarterly budget projections, because we are anticipating that if we aren't getting requested now, we certainly will. So in the last year, yes, there's been impacts, but we're definitely seeing that the biggest impact to COVID was not last year, actually it's this year. And we're anticipating that this will actually get larger. And instead of approaching these perhaps in one-off situations, that we bring that to council was our intent. We were hoping for June. Again, we just talked about this last Friday, and that so that you could see that in context to all of our relationships that we have with our tenants, as well as even some of the other commitments that we have through other agreements that we were unable to deliver on because of COVID. Our facilities were closed, for example. So advertisers didn't get the mileage out of their contracts. So we have recognized that this could get quite big. We'll have a budget impact, but really first and foremost that this is a real has become a burden that the groups that we work with and the tenants that we have just can't sustain any longer. So we were hoping to bring that in context to the bigger problem, put a big number on it, so that we're not looking at 600 here or 1,000 there, that overall in our budget, it's a bigger impact. And so that perhaps we could create some sort of process that would create criteria of how it is that we're perhaps forgiving some situations and not others. And, some of the questions you've asked today, what have you done to help yourself? All of that sort of thing. And again, we do have close relationships with our tenants. And we are having conversations with them, whether they're running our concession or skate sharpening or, daycares. I mean, we do have quite a list of them. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't think we absolutely will not be able to pull that off in the next, to be able to bring that for May 18th. We could bring something to a standing committee in June.
No, thank you for that background information, Ms. Howarth. For me, and I don't know if the rest of council is kind of stuck on this. To my knowledge, though, with the new community grant program and the waiving, they the Share Shop and other organizations similar to the Share Shop can apply for operational expenses through the community grant program. And that was my understanding that having that, they can now apply for those operational needs. Is that correct? Any final sort of thoughts regarding that? Am I misunderstanding that?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. Yes, that is correct. That is the I guess scope that council has directed for the program this year, which I know we have shared with other groups as recently as the museum, the Share Shop, that would apply for as well. So yes, that will be an option. Now, whether that gets oversubscribed, we anticipate that may be the case, but nonetheless, we're still encouraging everybody to apply through that.
Thank you for that, Ms. Howarth. I have Councillor Nelson's, Hawes, and Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Either a friendly amendment or a formal amendment, but I would prefer that the date was changed to June 8th, which is our first regular council meeting. That's, to me, it has to be enough time. We only have one regular a month, and an emerging issue that has turned into an emerging issue because of the delays in getting back to them, but also in getting all of the most funds approved and all of that. I think we owe it to these groups. I'm fine with supporting this as a one-off specific one. And if the agenda prep team and administration wants to bring back a broader document at that time or after, then so be it. But I'm happy to support this if the date is June 8th.
Councillor Nelson, is that a request for a friendly amendment to Councillor Race?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Race, do you accept?
I accept, and I certainly appreciate Councillor Nelson making that friendly amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nelson. Councillor Race. With that, I have Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the Ms. Howler's words in that we aren't neglecting this. I mean, I appreciate though, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, it wasn't a council directed, so administration following up with when it comes in information packages, it is, council that directs that. So, but at the same token, I'd also like to, I guess, I'm not sure if I'm still in support of this. I'd like to see it as a big picture, not just one organization or one renter, but we obviously are hearing that a lot more are, and I'm looking forward to hearing that report coming forward. But I'd like to also, just put out that Community Futures is another organization that this organization can reach out to assist them in potentially finding dollars or applying for, even probably helping a little bit with the community grant initiative as well, potentially. But that's, I think, a resource that they could link into. But I'm not against the fact if we want to bring it into June 8th meeting, I'm not against it. But I am, hopefully looking forward to soon after that hearing about what our other renters are going through and what we're looking at in a shortfall, with that COVID relief potentially. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. I'll go to Councillor Stashik and Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I have a couple concerns. One is the date. I'll circle back to the date though. For the moment, my main concern though is that this is addressing a concern that was brought to council from one tenant of the town of Hinton. It appears though that there are quite a number of tenants of the town of Hinton who have reached out to administration asking a similar question. I appreciate that the share shop was willing to reach out to council, but I want to make sure that that the other groups that came forward to administration with similar concerns are being treated fairly, and with that everybody's being addressed similarly, and that nobody's given any preferential treatment or step to the front of the queue. I would much rather see a report that's comprehensive and addresses equally all the concerns and potential needs of the tenants of the town of Hinton, including the share shop, obviously. So my question to administration, I guess, is twofold. If there was a direction from council to bring a comprehensive report back, when could that be reasonably achievable? This particular direction, if this particular direction as it's currently worded were to pass, is that a reasonable date to bring back something that addresses this motion? Thank you.
Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Ostashik. We would have to reprioritize some things in the queue right now. I believe Mayor Michaels and the deputy, I think we've just switched recently, in terms of your agenda review committee. I believe that evening we have 3 delegations and 10 action items. So we can certainly look to the agenda review group to reprioritize those. I believe that's also the evening of the grant, the community grant, that you would be awarding funds to the community grant. Without that agenda in front of me and knowing what's all in the queue, we could pull something together in the next sort of 3 weeks in order to get the report reviewed internally. and with some sort of proper recommendations for June 8th. I'm just bringing to council's attention that you have a full load that may have to be rearranged.
I could follow up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that, Acting CEO Howarth. In that case, I'm not going to support the proposed motion. I appreciate the sense of urgency that's around this, and I appreciate this is something that needs to get addressed. But as I said earlier, I prefer that it's something that gets addressed holistically. And the other concern is that there are significant, important items that are on upcoming agendas, and having to reprioritize those and have administration refocus their efforts when they've already got direction to bring items forward for that agenda as well as others. I don't want to see that at this stage, so I won't be supporting the motion as worded, but I certainly look forward to somebody from council potentially making an alternative direction that's a little broader and a little bit further reaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. So Councillor Stashik, would you or could you be the one to make this amendment to this motion to make it a bit more broader?
Councillor Stashik, you want to reply?
Sure, I suppose I could. So just to as a proposed friendly amendment, Councillor Race, I would like to see share shop removed, and that it's just Town of Hinton tenants, to make sure that there isn't any perception of any preferential treatment or preferential consideration. And then the other request that I would make, I'd have to look to administration and ask when a reasonable date would be to have this come back for consideration, where it's not going to overly conflict with any of the prioritized agenda items that are already coming forward.
Ms. Howarth.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Stashik. We would recommend June 18th, not before then, with the assurance, and I can speak to that now. Like I said, we are in contact with our tenants on a regular basis, and the kinds of things that we feel comfortable doing at an administration level, we have done. So we haven't, billed people for their season when their season hasn't started yet. Things like that we know just doesn't feel right to do, and doesn't make good business sense, and demonstrates that sort of understanding and empathy that we have for them. It's what our intent was with starting to meet internally collectively, is recognizing that at some point this is going to get to a level financially that will impact the budget severely and therefore needs to come to council. So that's the context of that. And so then as well, what do we do moving forward to mitigate that, hoping that we have half a year ahead of us and no one knows what's going to happen with COVID. And certainly the tenant income is one of many things that will be impacting our budget and we'll be bringing to council. So I'm sorry, so looking at the dates, June 22nd, I believe we could do. And again, knowing that between now and then we're having the conversations, we're not, sending out bills and charging interest and having all that sort of heavy-handed thing to it. We have already done what we can do administratively to work with the tenants, and we believe that we still have a good working relationship with them. So if we can bring something on the 22nd, it would be much more comprehensive, and we'll be able to put things into context for council, so that I think what you're intending here is that you're looking at it fairly and equitably, and we create some sort of system that can support everyone in these tough times.
Ms. Howard, just to confirm, do we have a standing committee meeting on June 22nd? That's the fourth Tuesday of June. I just want to confirm. So that's been changed, so we do have one?
It's, so everyone's chatting here. So we have a regular on the 8th, a standing on the 15th, and we are looking to do this,
Okay.
the standing of the 22nd. I do have that in my calendar confirming.
Yeah.
Yes, so I have nodding around my table. So yes, we can target for June 21st. It is the 4th, but that's because we bumped everything late that month. I mean, the 22nd.
22nd. Thank you for that clarification. With that, I'll go back to Councillor Stashik if he would want to add that to his friendly amendment or not.
Yeah, if we can, I would like to add the date of June 22nd, I believe it is, that administration said. And I support that because I feel it's important that administration has enough time to bring us a full comprehensive report that takes all the nuances into consideration and addresses them in the report, including budget consideration. I realize that this is something that's important to the community and important to the tenants and that they're struggling. But it does have budget implications. So if it means that there's a shortfall in revenue, it has to be addressed somewhere. I want to make sure administration has time to be able to look at that adequately and bring some valid recommendations to council. So if that friendly amendment is accepted by Councillor Race, I'll support it moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Race, are you okay with changing the removal of share shop and change the town of Hinton tenants with a date of June 22nd of this year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am amendable to that. I do have a question for admin.
Okay, one moment. So Ms. Anderson, we are okay to change that friendly amendment, and I'll just ask her to put that in the chat after. And with that, Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Howarth, when you reach out or you talk to your the tenants that we have, is part of the conversation, you know, what can we do to help, or what have you done to help yourself? Are you aware of all the government grants out there, or the most? So what is the conversation?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, Councillor Race. Yes, our facilities supervisor, Ms. Arsenault, is very seasoned at this and has very positive relationships with our tenants. And we do understand their business quite well, being, of course, in town-owned facilities. And so she's having those conversations. We may not be privy to all of the options out there for funding. We certainly recommend the ones that we know about, and especially the ones that are ours, that they would be eligible for. And so we do work with them for sure. I mean, lots of our tenants are there because they are providing a service to our customers, and other ones are pure tenants that are delivering a separate sort of, you know, business or service to the community. And so even those two different categories sort of impact the town differently. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And my second question is, do we have a lot of not-for-profit tenants?
Ms. Howard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Race. I don't believe we do. Most of them are, even though they feel like they're nonprofit,
Yeah.
most of them are for-profits. Again, share shop would be an exception to that. And I'm not sure, we do have Mr. Dale Washington online. I'm not sure if he knows that answer more completely than the one I've given, seeing that is in his area, but if you want a more complete answer, I could check with him.
Are we, Councillor Race, did you want an answer on that? Or?
No, that's okay. I'm good.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Council, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, so I actually won't support this one. It's been amended now to be way too broad. I look, you know, we rent out the entire top floor of the town building and bottom floor of the town building to the province. I have no interest in pulling together a report that finds ways to work with the province on rental rates. If it's a for-profit business that is renting from the town of Hinton, I believe they have other options to go down. yeah, I don't know why we wouldn't just keep this simple and have it be something a little bit more bite-sized before we go down a path that I don't know if we really know what that path looks like. So if this stuck a little bit smaller, I could support it, but this to me sends administration off on a pretty major endeavor that I look at whatever the results are. Likely what I would support is what the original motion was, which was some help with the share shop, and maybe another that I can't think of who it would be. So I won't be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Is there an appetite from council? Because although we don't know the answer exactly which not-for-profits we rent to, I see a distinction between for-profit and not-for-profit for this specific. So we can simply add not-for-profit if that's the will of council. I can only speak for myself. I would want to target the not-for-profits, and if there happens to be another one or a third, great. Just so we don't exclude any other not-for-profits. And I'm kind of with Councillor Nelson. I wouldn't want to open this up to all the for-profits in this building. There are two major ones. That would be my. I'll support it this way, but I would prefer it to just be not-for-profits. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are you saying that someone could amend and kind of slide in to bring back a report no later than June 22nd, 2021 on available options to assist the non-profit Town of Hinton tenants? Just slide those couple words in there.
That was my intent, and I think that was the sort of the intent to at least get Councillor Nelson closer to potentially supporting this. I don't know if there's anything else outstanding on his behalf, but I think that was our intent, that this would be specific to not-for-profits.
Yeah. Well, it's my motion, but I would certainly appreciate any councillor making that next amendment. Thank you for bringing that up, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Magoon.
I'd like to propose hopefully a friendly amendment. And I mean, obviously no big surprise, Your Worship. I would like to include the term not-for-profit prior to tenant in the motion if Councillor Race accepts that.
Councillor Race.
Councillor Magoon, you are a gem, and I do accept that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How does that work with government bodies? Because I don't believe they're for-profit entities. I just don't know how they're categorized. This is why I didn't make the amendment, is I'm just not kind of clear. We're going, I think, in the right direction, but I just don't know the verbiage well enough and understand the titles of different organizations well enough to provide an amendment that suits it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. That is a fair comment. Governments, including our own town organization, is considered a not-for-profit in that general sense. I'm trying to assist council here on how we could narrow that down. I understand what your intent is. You're talking about sort of that Registered Societies Act, nonprofit local club kind of tenants. I'm wondering if I may. I know I saw Mr. Wallach take his mic off when I offered to join him. If we can get a sense that we know that there's 2 or 3, then we can list those. And maybe if we could even maybe give us a few minutes to check on that and come back to this if you'd like, because if we can, I know that there aren't that many. We're not looking at 10 or anything like that. I think there's, a handful, if that, of true nonprofits that I know you're talking about, 8 groups that provide services, not governments like provincial or municipal government. So if I can confirm what that is, then you can actually list them in your motion. Or else you could say something like excluding government agencies, and then that would exclude, yeah. Sorry.
We'll give you a moment to look at that. I'll go to the rest of the queue and see what the appetite of council is. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I appreciate the suggestion about taking government agencies out of the discussion. Obviously, my intent wasn't to have organizations that have an ability to collect revenue through taxation to be considered for rent relief. But I do have a bit of a concern about limiting it to only nonprofits as well. There are quite a few for-profit organizations that provide valuable services to the community that do it while they rent a town-owned facility. And a lot of them have been severely impacted by COVID. It's not just the nonprofits that are impacted by this, the for-profits are as well. A lot of them have had drastic revenue reductions, and without the opportunity to be addressed in this report from administration, it begs the question, what recourse do they have then to be able to go to their landlord to discuss rent relief? So I would definitely support having government agencies not be a part of the motion, but I have some pretty strong concerns about for-profits being excluded from it as well. So we'll see how the wording comes out. I'm not sure if I'll be able to support it though if it's only addressing nonprofits. Thank you.
Councillor Stashik. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I guess I'm of the mind. I already heard, Ms. Haworth already speak to the fact that administration is working on this. Is that correct, Ms. Haworth? I mean, you've already talked about that, and we're planning to bring forward, a holistic look at what's going on in our community with our renters. And I'm comfortable personally with that, with leaving administration without a motion from council this evening, knowing that they are bringing this forward. That's going to include the aforementioned share shop and all other, renters potentially that are potentially in need of some sort of assistance. So that's where I'm at. Is it necessary for us as council to go down this road of being descriptive of who's not for profit and profit, and let administration do already the work that they're doing, having those conversations, which they'll be bringing forward then that report potentially, for council to look at as holistic. So I guess that's where I'm kind of at right now, because I think we're going down a unprepared route right now without all the information to make a reasonable motion. Those are my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, sometimes this is the consequence of friendly amendments. They kind of don't get challenged from the rest of council. So in the spirit of trying to move something forward, I can't speak for the entirety of council, but I'm sensing there's appetite to get a report excluding government agencies on rent relief for Town of Hinton tenants. Do we want to frame it in that sense? So it would take away just the not-for-profits, but it would exclude explicitly government agencies and get a report. Then we can have a longer conversation with all the pieces. I'm sensing there's at least closer appetite than that. So for the sake of this going south even more, it would take another amendment to get there. But that's what I'm sensing is our target point right now. With that, I'll go to Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. I want to stay with this motion. I appreciate the work that administration does, but I do not want to wait on a report from them. The share shop asked us for help in February. It's now May. So I don't want to kick this down the road and be helping them out in October when some of us might not be sitting in those chairs. So, I'd like to do what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. Let's exclude, government, and let's.
You muted yourself.
So anyway, I'm happy with what you're saying. I think we should make an amendment to exclude government, and let's get this passed and move on to our next item. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels. I appreciate Councillor Race's comments regarding giving administration direction with a date attached to it. So I do appreciate that this was likely coming forward anyway, but a direction with a date attached gives council and the members of the community comfort in knowing when it's going to come back and for council to make a decision. And with that, I would like to propose an amendment. It's simply to add the word non-government between Hinton and tenants at the end of the motion. So it would read to assist the town of Hinton non-government tenants. I think that addresses kind of what council is getting at in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik, for that amendment. Council, there's an amendment on the floor to add that. Any debate on that specifically? Seeing none, and I'll just ask Ms. Anderson if she can just put up the amendment. The amendment would be to add the non-government before the town of Hinton tenants. Council, all those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Now we have a motion that reads to direct administration to bring back a report no later than June 22nd, 2021 on available options to assist the non-government town of Hinton tenants. Councillor Nelson.
So we've now also removed nonprofits. Is that correct?
I'll go to Ms. Howard. Our understanding based on the previous conversation that it doesn't exclude it. It includes for-profit and not-for-profit, but excludes government agencies only. Ms. Howard, was that the understanding from administration?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Michaels. That is our interpretation of the motion, is that we will bring back a report for all of our tenants, excluding the government related ones. So that includes private, business, for-profit and profit.
Councillor Nelson?
Yeah, thanks. I'm not going to be in support of it. I wanted this to stay narrow enough that, you know, we're talking about 10 agenda item things. For-profit businesses have lots of different programs out there that not-for-profits don't, and I would like it to be just the one. So I'm not going to be in favor. I don't want to send administration off bringing back huge reports when an agenda item, like when this motion came forward with the scope of helping a couple really small individual things that have unique circumstances and provide a service for a municipality. So I don't think this is in the spirit of anymore. And with that in mind, I'm not going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Council, any further debate before I call this to question? Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. To admin, how big would this report be? How many tenants do we have that are, non-government? How much work is going to have to be devoted into this report?
Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mayor Michaels, through to Councillor Race. Off the top of my head, I'm going to guess 10. There could be plus or minus 5 on either. Well, definitely could be 5, 10 more than that. Our only government lease, I believe, is the province for the first and third floor of the government building. The rest are either nonprofits or they're profits that are in our building that are providing services. So I would say the concession, the skate sharpener, those are 2 private businesses, but they're affected by our business. The daycare is a business out of the rec center, but they provide a community service. So there's examples like that. And then there's tenants such as the way that we manage our community center, and also barrel safety, for example, and things like that. So there's got to be at least 10, but they are tenants and agreements that we know well and we work with on a regular basis. So I believe that we could bring something worth council's discussion for June 22nd.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Race and Ms. Howard for that. Council, anything further? Seeing None. I'll call to question to direct administration to bring back a report no later than June 22nd, 2021 on available options to assist the non-government town of Hinton tenants. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried 6-1. Council, I'll look for some nods. Anybody interested in a break, or do we want to finish this action item and then go for break? A break? Anybody?
I want to go break. Yeah.
Okay, I see a couple. We'll call a